Greetings, ABSS. This is a recording of the October 2023 session entitled Designing Student Independent Tasks within Canvas. Here are the objectives for this session. We will explore Canvas features such as modules, pages, student annotations, discussions, peer review, and Google LTI 1.3. Participants will experience the Canvas features from a student perspective, explore Canvas features from the teacher's perspective, and collaborate and design experiences for students within Canvas. First, we wanted to start off with a little alignment. So based on the ABSS strategic plan and portrait of a graduate, let's talk about how the Canvas features align to the ABSS portrait of a graduate. There are 4 competencies under the portrait of a graduate. There's adaptability, balanced, self-reliant, and solution-oriented. With the communication competency, how could that align to the Canvas discussion and peer reviews? With collaboration, using Canvas peer reviews may address this competency. With learner mindset and personal responsibility, Canvas discussions, peer reviews, and Google LTI could be used to address this competency. And then with critical thinking and problem solver, Canvas discussions, peer reviews, and Google LTI can be addressed with using these features under the portrait of a graduate. Okay. So think about that as we explore these features during this session. How do they align to the ABSS portrait of a graduate? Let's talk about the alignment to the NC teacher evaluation rubric. So we know that there are different standards under that evaluation rubric, and I wanted to address 2 that align to what we're discussing in this session. All right, this standard where teachers know the content they teach and teachers make instruction relevant to students. Teachers facilitate learning for their students, and teachers know the ways in which learning takes place, and they know the appropriate levels of intellectual, physical, social, and emotional development of their students. So as we progress through this session, think about how these standards of your evaluation rubric align to the features that we're going to discuss. And then let's talk about the alignment to the ISTE standards for teachers. If you've been around a while, you know that we used to have those NC digital competencies for teachers. Yet in July 1st, on July 1st, 2023, North Carolina has replaced the North Carolina digital competencies with the ISTE standards for educators. If you wanted to explore those, there's a link here to take you to those ISTE standards for educators. But I wanted to point out 2 of those standards, which are the designer and the facilitator, where educators design authentic learner-driven activities in environments that recognize and accommodate learner variability. Okay. And then facilitator, where educators facilitate learning with technology to support student achievement of the ISTE standards for students. So think about, while we're progressing through this session, how do these ISTE standards align to the features that we're going to discuss and explore? You've probably heard a lot about gradual release models, or better yet, just lesson planning in general, right? So how does a gradual release model align, or how can we couple that with blended learning practices when we're thinking about teacher-directed instruction? So this chart will show the component of gradual release, how we define it, and then the Canvas feature that may be leveraged for the different components. So with strong hooks, we capture and connect. How could we use things like discussions or pages with hyperlinks to address the strong hooks portion of our lesson? The presentation, or the I do, this is usually where you won't use much technology, right? You'll be modeling for students and talking them through, or lecturing, right? So if you were to think about what Canvas feature you could leverage, it might be pages where you link in resources. Maybe it's a link to your slide deck or different resources that you're going to use for the I do portion of your presentation. So with guided practice, this is what you hear of as the we do or the to do or group and partner works. So how could we use things like discussions in Canvas, student annotations, peer reviews, Google LTI, because it has that collaborative feature during the guided practice portion of your lesson. And then with lesson closure or performance monitoring, how could you leverage quizzes? Now, we're not going to talk about quizzes today during this session, but that is, I did want to point that out. And that's why we have a little asterisk here, because we're really not going to go over quizzes today during this session. And then independent practice, the you do. This is where technology fits best when thinking about lesson planning. right? So how can you give students opportunity to practice and make meaning of their learning with the you do portion of your lesson? And how could you leverage discussions, student annotation, peer reviews, or Google LTI? All right. I do want to point out that you might not want to use technology for every component of your lesson, right? Because there's a time and place for using the right tool at the right time. So thinking through when might you use technology during your lessons. Then I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about blended learning practices and models during small group instruction. So if you're thinking about implementing small group instruction in your classroom, how might you leverage Canvas features such as discussions, peer reviews, and Google LTI 1.3 during small group instruction? So I wanted to show you the blended learning site for ABSS. So when you go here, there's a slide deck where you can dive a little bit deeper into what blended learning is and is not. Then here are some models and their accompanying practices. So if you were thinking about modified flipped, how could you use instructional videos? If you were thinking about station rotation, could you use digital choice boards? With individual station rotation, could you think about digital playlists or Canvas module requirements? And with flex and digital pathways, with the flex model with digital pathways, here are some examples, or could you use some mastery paths for that? Then there are some tips for managing Google Class. Oh my goodness. Then there's some tips for managing classrooms during small group instruction. So check these out as well. We're not going to focus on blended learning models and practices during this session. Yet if you're interested, you may want to come back for the December session in which we will dive a little bit deeper into the models and practices here at ABSS. All right, during this portion of the session, participants had time to try out these different features as they were students, so from the student lens. What we did was participants joined the Canvas course as a student, and they had to try 2 of the 3 try it tasks. So in Canvas, I have created 3 modules, right? And then there were 3 different triads. There was a module for student annotations, there was a module for discussions with peer reviews, and there was a module for Google LTI 1.3. So let's take a look at what that looked like. So from the student perspective, so I wanted to showcase this is a page. So I'm using pages to organize the information that I'm sharing. So this Canvas course will be used for PD throughout the school year. So I wanted to organize this page to show each bi-monthly session different exemplars from those sessions. All right, so for October, here you'll see where I've linked the modules that we were going to explore. All right, so maybe thinking through how you might use pages in your Canvas course if you don't already do so. But here we go. So we're going to go to click on the module. So you would go to student annotation, try it. And here you would be able to try out student annotation from a student's perspective. And you would use the tools that are here to complete this task. All right. So here's a pointer, the highlighter, the text box, the strike through, the drawing, the shape. So you would experience student annotation. Participants also had the opportunity to take a look at discussions. So this was not academic examples. So they would look at the picture and answer by simply clicking reply and putting their answer in. One thing that we did with this discussion is that once participants responded, this was a peer review discussion. So students were automatically assigned a peer's discussion response to respond to. So think about how you might leverage that in your classroom. And then participants were able to try out this Google LTI 1.3 example. So again, this was non-academic. So with this example, what participants were able to do was to try out the Google LTI 1.3 using Google Slides. And so participants were able to design their locker to tell a little bit more about themselves. So what they would do is use the pictures or images or insert their own images and decorate their locker to tell a little bit more about themselves. So after participants explored those Google or Canvas features, we took some time to think about what did you notice as you experienced this practice from a student lens? How might creating this type of experience for your students positively impact learning for students in your classroom? So we answered those questions. And then we took some time to think about how we might design it. Right. So from a teacher lens, what does it look like to design a student annotation assignment? What does it look like to design discussions or peer reviews? And what does it look like to design a task that has that Google LTI 1.3? So in Canvas, you will notice that I provided some links under each module. So here's a student annotation module, and here's a link about Doc Viewer or creating student annotation assignments and videos how to. With discussions, there's an article about creating discussions with peer reviews, creating peer review assignments, and a video about creating discussions. Then under Google LTI, there's a copy of the locker assignment should you want to use that in your classroom. And there's a video about creating and grading Google LTI assignments. So participants spent time exploring how to design those types of tasks for their students. Thereafter, we spent some time thinking about what it might look like in practice. So participants spent more time exploring and planning. They were able to decide if they wanted to join a breakout room or stay in the main session with a facilitator for additional support. So we gave some choice there as to how they progress through the rest of the session. But here are our planning questions. What's an upcoming standard or unit? What lessons or tasks might you have planned? Could they be refined by implementing a practice from today's session? So not thinking about changing your lesson plans, but just refining them to maybe use some of the Canvas features that we talked about. And how could leveraging a Canvas feature positively impact teaching and learning in your classroom? After that, we wrapped up our session by spending some time reflecting. So we asked after attending today's session, what might be your next steps? What do you want to stay mindful of? And how might it support you in your next steps? We wrapped up the session with questions. Participants received information about upcoming PD opportunities. And I provided them with the opportunity to connect with me as much as I'm doing as for you, right? So my name is Brittany Jackson. I'm the K-12 Blended Learning Specialist. Here you will see my email, you will see my mobile and text number, and you'll see a link to the Blended Learning at ABSS site. Please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out for me to support you. I'm always happy to do so. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate all you do.